Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Protected this country!
Please, I'm asking a nice just walk down the block, please.
And I can't speak, y'all want to shut me up. Y'all want to shut me up. I was here on October 5th, I saw them beating people that had nothing to do with anything, just grabbing people out the crowd. There's no honor in that. I'm in New York City, I am from New York City, and these cops are hurting people that I fought to protect.
$2 billion. That's how much J.P. Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the U.S., says it lost over the past 6 weeks.
They were self-inflicted. we are accountable, and what happened violates our own standards and principles by how we want to operate the company.
Jamie Dimon is the company's CEO.
You should know that all appropriate corrective action will be taken as necessary in the future.
In other news, if you had to fill up your gas tank this morning, you may have had a nasty shock. In Vancouver, a liter now costs on average $1.44 a liter. Halifax is $1.43, and in Toronto, a liter averages about $1.38.
If the situation in Iran, the tensions between the West and Iran escalate, that could easily cause gasoline prices in Canada to shoot above $1.60 a liter.
So last quarter, we're told that things went really well. The GDP grew by 2.5%. What they didn't tell you is that real disposable personal income fell by 1.7%. A typical worker had his wages go up by $1.23 per hour, okay, over 36 years. For the top 1%, how much did their income go up? 275%.
That at peak, Canadian banks received $114 billion worth of support. While our politicians were trumpeting the soundness of the Canadian banking system on the global stage, 3 of Canada's banks were at some point underwater. Canada's banks declared $27 billion in profits between them. The CEOs of each of these banks were among the highest paid CEOs in the country. It's clear that the support provided for Canadian banks was much more substantial than Canadians would like to believe.
Are you familiar with austerity?
Austerity?
Yeah. You know what the word austerity means at all?
No.
Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I didn't bother to ask.
Are you familiar with austerity at all?
No.
No? Are you familiar with austerity?
No idea.
No?
Are you familiar with the term austerity?
Do you guys know what austerity is?
No.
No? Are you familiar with the word austerity?
No.
No. Are you familiar with austerity?
No, I'm not.
No. Are you aware of our agreement in the G20 about the upcoming austerity measures that are going to be implemented within Canada, similar to the ones that have been going on in Europe and stuff?
No, I haven't read anything about the Canadian one, but I've been watching Greece and Spain, Portugal, a few of those countries that are just right on the tipping edge there.
We're in a group called the G20. You guys probably heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Because of the agreements that we made with 19 countries in the World Bank and the IMF, we have to cut our social spending and stuff like that by a certain date. Now, we haven't even started doing that yet, but they plan on cutting unemployment, welfare, hospitals, policing, education. How do you feel about that? Do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing?
A horrible thing.
Yeah,
that's horrible. That's really bad.
Yeah.
Totally. I think if this country would only rise up, the people would rise up and throw them out, or give them 6 months to do something and then throw them out. We give them the warning, you know.
Now, all attempts to form a coalition have so far failed in Greece as far-left leader Alexis Tsipras rejected proposals by the pro-bailout parties. Without the deal, Greece will be forced to hold a new election in June. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said any new Greek government must stick to the austerity plan agreed upon in exchange for the bailout. Economics experts warn her demands are unrealistic.
Get rid of corporate America. You have to get rid of the power that they have. You have to greatly control every transaction and what's going on there, and basically you have to make them impotent, because as long as they have the power, they're going to continue to exploit and manipulate the working class.
You about this, or how do you see this affecting you guys?
Well, I guess longer waits.
If our doctors go somewhere else, then we're going to have longer wait times for CT scans or appointments and whatnot, which will affect me.
Probably the most concerning thing that I have is that we don't have enough doctors.
You could be spending more time to wait and still not get the right answer, depending on what you're going in for.
It doesn't sound fair to me.
I don't think it's a good thing. That it's going to be a lot worse for everybody.
So it's not in the best interest of your health for sure.
The government is being accused of misleading Canadians on another front tonight. Public service union leaders warn there will be many more job cuts than the 19,000 promised in the budget last week.
The Native Women's Association of Canada, along with other national Aboriginal organizations, have had their funding cut 100% in the health portfolio. This is not about helping the communities. This is about turning its back on more than 70% of Aboriginal women who live off reserve. This is a choice the government's making. This is why we need a strong Aboriginal voice, so we can inform the government, use evidence so they can inform their policies.
It's fairly extraordinary to me that on behalf of the minister, you would not arrange a meeting not only with his constituents, but with physicians, many of whom are from different disciplines across the city, to discuss serious concerns. There's a proposition by the government right now that's going to deny many refugees coming here, some from camps directly, medications like insulin for diabetes. There's sections here called medical emergency. Listen to this, doctors. Medical emergency - heart attack. Then it says coverage provided based on client status. For heart attack, none. None for a heart attack. How can that be in Canada in an official document? The federal government puts out a document that says if people having heart attacks, it's not going to provide medical coverage for them, or insulin for diabetics.
So I'm mostly focusing on the austerity aspect of this because that's what it is. And to me as a radical, I mean, really austerity just means class war. Taking back power and privilege to the people who already have most of it, and a concentration of wealth and power. The 2008 economic collapse was totally used as an excuse, like a linchpin, the way 9/11 was used to launch wars and take people's rights back. The 2008 economic collapse was used in the same way by governments and corporations to launch an attack on working people. Caterpillar is an awesome example of that, I think. A lot of us saw not that specific case coming, but things like that were going to be hitting. And it's just a really good example of that, a massive corporation known for its extreme class war, and that they came into it totally with a plan ahead. They weren't sweating it in January the way the workers were. They already had it all figured out, the groundwork laid, they knew what their plan was, and they came in and took what they wanted and left us high and dry as a community and as a group of workers, and there's no concern. I mean, it's a war. The systems we're using, and part of it's like George says, I mean, that's just one symptom where the money creation system itself is flawed. I mean, the Americans have had a system like that for about 100 years now, where they're getting basically robbed on every dollar they get. And now we have a similar system. But that's just one symptom to me, a really callous and insulting one, but one symptom of the larger system that is just geared against us. I mean, if you have a system that rewards and flows money and power to people who already have it, I mean, it's going to end up with an extreme imbalance, and that's what we're seeing. In fact, some of us think what we're seeing is the end phases of capitalism, where they're reaching the limits of how much more they can absorb. Like how much resources can they go on and take on? How much can they pollute the earth? How much can they screw the workers over before the system just can't keep gobbling and growing and expanding, right? Like, my feeling is that capitalism is experiencing some problems in sustaining its growth, and that's really what we're up against, and that it's up to us to fight it.
And we are facing an economic crisis. We are seeing levels of unemployment that we have not seen since the Great Depression. We know that it's not just this government, but that the root causes of these problems are capitalism, are colonialism, are patriarchy. We're talking about austerity. He's bringing us in the exact opposite direction that we need to be going. He is slashing our social services. He is investing billions of dollars on war and killing people, on fighter jets. You know, it's like he's on this ship, and he's driving the ship, and he is driving us down, sinking our ship. The government uses fear to impose these measures of austerity. And this is very much happening with the Harper government. So people are afraid, so oftentimes won't rise up because they are afraid that they will lose their job, that their organization's funding will get cut from the Harper government.
Limits the civil rights of many Canadians.
We're in Montreal right now. We're celebrating the police's new silly little laws. So how was your first concussion grenade?
Fine. I was happy with it. I could smell the tear gas, and it brought out tears of joy.
So right now there's concussion grenades going off, and the police are separated a group of us, and they're splitting them off, and there's more coming this way right now. Come on, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. No peace! Fuck the police! You guys are doing it to yourselves! Another thing I want to mention is everybody says that you know, the protesters are so violent in Montreal. You know, I did see some windows broken. I did see a couple rocks thrown. I'm not going to lie about that, but that was only after tear gas, concussion grenades, rubber bullets, shields and batons, and being chased down, and sound cannons, and kettling. So I mean, you just want to peacefully assemble and march on the streets. That should be our rights as Canadians, to be able to do that. But, you know, they're taking all that away incrementally through all these bills. Wake the fuck up.
But there is a serious hole and default in this plan and in their strategy. And that hole is that solidarity is stronger than fear. And that is what the Quebec students have shown us, and that is what movements like Occupy are showing us, and that is how, as Ben mentioned, we need to win, and that is how we are going to win.
I really don't have faith in government or parliamentary efforts in curing this. You know, that would be a trend that's strong within Occupy and a lot of the larger movements that we've modeled after, like the indignance in Europe and the Arab Spring. People are having less and less faith in the political institutions that have been provided for us.
It seems to be happening everywhere, any type of dissent whatsoever, and it meets with force and violence from the police. So good luck trying to publicly assemble in your city. Do it though.